Good afternoon. Starting to see everyone come in. Just as a reminder, please mute your microphone. And if you don't, that's okay, because Natalie's going to catch you. Natalie's in the room with me producing today. So thank you, Natalie. And please mute. The other thing is, as you have questions, go ahead and pop your questions into the chat. We're going to be watching those questions. When I get through everything at the end, I may have answered some of the questions, but I'll go through and answer every question that I can. My goal is to keep this to right around an hour. I was talking to my dad this morning, and my dad has been in this business, Mike, principal broker here at NavX. He's been in the business for 52 years. And he said that this is quite possibly the biggest change that he has seen. And in fact, I would say it's probably one of the biggest changes in the history of our business. And over the weekend, starting Friday after the news broke, I started getting calls and text messages from a lot of you agents out there asking what I thought about it. And I know there's a lot of fear out here. That's the first place that a lot of us have gone, is to that place of fear and being scared about what does the future of our industry look like, but really more importantly, what does the future for my family look like if I want to sell real estate, if I want to help people achieve the dream of home ownership. And so today I want to set you at ease. It is a major, major change, but here I want to give you a couple of quotes on change to start it out. One was great that I heard over the weekend from Jared James. He's one of the big real estate coaches out there. I have a lot of respect for him. I followed him for a while. He said, change doesn't eliminate people. The inability to change with that change is what eliminates people. And so, we have to be willing to change with change. John Maxwell says, change is inevitable. Growth is optional. We are going to experience change in this life. We're certainly going to experience change in this business. That change is inevitable, but if you want to grow, become better, be an expert, provide true value, that's optional. That is up to you. And it's my goal today to encourage you to be ready and to be ready to provide true value to your clients. Here's the reality. Change is happening. There's nothing that we can do about it, but we can be early adopters to the change, and that's what we are planning to do. Probably the best quote that I heard, actually, it came from my dad. He sent me a message this morning. He said, son, we are not in a crisis. We are in an opportunity. How we react is key to our success. You are going to make it. And so I want that to be an encouragement to everyone that is under the sound of my voice today and those that will be watching this later. I want you to know that this is truly not a time of crisis, but a time of opportunity. And we are going to react with the right mindset, and you are going to be successful. And so that is my heart coming out of this today. So I want to welcome, by the way, we have agents from our company, we have lenders, we have agents from outside of the company joining us today. And I want to welcome all of you and let you know I'm just really glad that you've chosen to take this time today to invest in yourselves, your knowledge, your understanding. I promise I don't have all of the answers here today, but my goal is to get you closer to understanding how all of this is today, how it's going to play out, and then what we're going to do as a company moving forward to get you all prepared. So here's the problem, all right? Always start off with the problem, because then the solutions come once you really identify the problem. I believe the biggest part of this problem is fake news. You know, that fake news term, they started throwing it around many years ago, and a lot of fake news has come out around this over the weekend. So here's some of the headlines. The 6% commission on buying or selling a home is gone after Realtors Association agrees to seismic settlement. That's the CNN headline, fake news. Realtors settlement could dramatically change the cost of housing sales. Washington Post, fake news. Powerful realtor group agrees to slash commissions to settle lawsuits. New York Times, fake news. National Association of Realtors to cut commissions to settle lawsuits. Thank you, CBS News, for fake news. Realtors reach settlement that will change how Americans buy and sell homes. Maybe a little bit of truth in that. It still falls into that fake news category. That's from the Wall Street Journal. So let me start with this. In case you are like, well, what are we even talking about here? I don't even know what the real crux of the issue is. Let's talk about the settlement that came out on Friday, so we at least have the facts as we know them right now. On Friday, the National Association of Realtors put out a letter along with all of the terms of the settlement. If you are a realtor, you should have received that. If you're not, we can probably post this somewhere or share it with those who attended today. But all of that to say, here are the terms of the settlement. First of all, release of liability. If you are with NavX Realty, and quite frankly, the vast majority of you attending on here today or watching this, unless you're with one of the major companies like Anywhere, Home Services, Berkshire Hathaway, they have not settled yet. Anywhere has settled, so they would be covered. Any of the larger independent companies that are over $2 billion in annual volumes, and that's averaged out over a number of years. If you're under that, you get released of liability. Okay, so most everybody on here, we are going to be released of any liability for any future copycat lawsuits here. Now, big change. Compensation offers are moved off the MLS. NAR has agreed to put in place a new rule prohibiting offers of compensation on the MLS. Offers of compensation could continue to be an option consumers can pursue off MLS through negotiation and consultation with real estate professionals. And sellers can offer buyer concessions on an MLS. For example, concession for buyer closing costs. This effect goes into effect mid-July of 2024. Also, written agreements. This is another major change. Written agreements for MLS participants acting for buyers. So while the NAR has been advocating for the use of written agreements for years, in this settlement, we have agreed to require MLS participants working with buyers to enter into written representation agreements with their buyers. This change goes into effect mid-July 2024. Okay, so those are really the two very biggest. You've got the compensation offers being moved off the MLS, i.e., according to the media, 6% is gone. Well, first of all, 6% was never a thing. These commissions have always been negotiable. And in addition to that, written agreements, the funny thing about this is that I was on, when this all broke on Friday, I was on with our brokerage coach. I coach with a company called EDI. There's an amazing group of brokers. We all have a group session once a month, and all of this broke Friday while we were on our group session. And one of the guys from Utah, he said, man, I was talking to a buddy of mine from Oregon, and would you believe that until late last year, they were never required to have a buyer agency agreement in place to work with a buyer? He's like, I just don't know where people get off not using these, right? And here, I didn't want to pipe up and be the one to say, well, in Ohio, we still don't require them. So Ohio is a very late adopter to all of this. Moving forward, though, this is going to be a requirement, and I'll talk a little bit more about it here in a second. So other parts of this settlement, there's a settlement payment over the next 4 years. NAR is going to pay out $418 million. If you put that in addition to what Keller settled for, what Remax settled for, what Anywhere Real Estate settled for, it's like over $700 million. And I sometimes feel like I went into the wrong profession because the attorneys on this thing are going to make between 10 and 20% of that total settlement. They're going to make like $70 million plus on this whole thing. So I don't know. Maybe we could all become attorneys. I don't know. Also, the NAR, as part of the settlement, is allowed to continue denying any wrongdoing because we didn't do anything wrong. There are agents that have communicated some things wrong over time, but at the end of the day, the NAR did nothing wrong. We have always said that that these commissions are negotiable, right? All right, so let me go into a little bit more of the practice changes, moving into especially the compensation of offers. It says, we were able to retain the right of consumers to continue to have cooperative compensation as an option, so long as they pursue it off MLS through negotiation and consultation with real estate professionals. Here's the implications for us as agents. There will continue to be many ways in which buyer brokers could be compensated, including through offers of compensation communicated off MLS, as long as we believe that it is in the interest of the sellers, buyers, their brokers to make offers of compensation. But using the MLS to communicate offers of compensation would no longer be an option. Further down, compensation would continue to be negotiable and should always be negotiated between agents and the consumers they serve. I will tell you, negotiable, and really a key word in all of this is negotiation. It's time to brush up on our negotiation skills and get better at negotiating. I highly encourage you. Years ago, I took Certified Negotiating Expert. Fantastic class. It's going to become even more important now, and that is a designation, the CNE, Certified Negotiating Expert designation. So please consider taking that to improve your negotiation skills. All right. Implications for buyers and sellers. This settlement would preserve the choices of consumers have regarding real estate services and compensation. After the new rule goes into effect, listing brokers and sellers could continue to offer compensation for buyer broker services, but such offers could not be communicated via the MLS. It repeats on and on. Bottom line is this: we can offer compensation in other ways. For example, we could offer it on our private website, only for our listings, but we could offer it on our private website. The other thing is, if a seller has been educated to this and they're willing to offer a buyer agent compensation, you as an agent can pick up the phone, you call the other agent, and you say, hey, I'm going to be writing an offer on 123 Main Street, and I just wanted to check, is the seller offering any buyer agent compensation on that? And they'll say either yes, they are, it's 2%, it's 3%, or whatever flat fee they're willing to offer, or they'll say, no, they're not. In which case, we know that we have to try to negotiate for our fee from the seller in that case. We will begin to use broker fee agreements a lot, I believe. As we submit offers, we will mark on the contract that there's an addendum. That addendum will be a broker fee agreement. Now, this is one of the things that everyone's been freaking out about, but I want to make this point, and that is that in the commercial real estate world, there's never been offers of compensation. So this is how the commercial real estate world has done business for many, many years. And guess what? Those agents are getting paid on their transactions. You are still going to get paid as well. You may just need to learn to negotiate, learn to communicate more with the consumer. But at the end of the day, this will become common practice as we begin to use it over time. All right, so the other thing, the new rule about written agreements. This is where I really feel like we have the biggest change. So NAR has long encouraged its members to use written agreements because they help consumers understand exactly what services and value they will be provided and how much, and for how much, sorry. The settlement provides that the MLS participants working with buyers must enter into written representation agreements with those buyers. Here's the implication for members and home buyers and sellers. This is the biggest implication of this whole settlement, in my opinion. MLS participants acting for buyers would be required to enter into written agreements with their buyers before touring a home. So according to this, according to what this is telling us from the National Association of Realtors, there is no more days of, one of my past clients calls me and says, hey, we want to get into this house today, or a Zillow lead coming in, or a pay-per-click coming in, or a call off a sign coming in, wanting to see a property, and us being able to say, yeah, sure, let's meet at the property at 3 o'clock. And tour the property, what this is saying is that we would need to be in a written agreement with them before we can tour the properties or tour homes with them. Okay, so in my opinion, one of the very biggest changes in all of this. These agreements can help consumers understand exactly what services and value will be provided and for how much. It's really about educating the consumer in all of this. And so that's what the NAR is saying. And so this is where the fear comes from. I got the fear over the weekend from people that buy a lot of Zillow leads, and they're like, you know, I'm going to go out of business. Like I'm done. And it's like, no, you're not done. We're just going to find new ways to bring value and to show our value to those potential buyers. So they're like, oh man, if I don't sign with you, I'm going to miss out on my dream home, you know, because of the value that you provide to me as an agent. And so here's a few things that I just want you to keep in mind. This essentially, in the mind of the consumer, is decoupling or separating out buyer and seller commissions, right? They've always been considered one. And so this is kind of decoupling them. And so that is in the mind of the consumer. I'll talk a little bit more about how I think we need to be communicating this, at least as of today. This is my thought as we move forward, okay? But in the mind of the consumer, especially with the way that the media is reporting this, and that's the big thing we're going to be fighting against here, it is separating it, decoupling it in the mind of the consumer. All right, and then I want you to keep this in mind. One of the, I think it was the Washington Post that said that this is going to drive housing prices down. Okay, let's think about that. You know, anyone that ever take a basic economics class? Because if you ever took basic economics, nowhere is it the third-party commission that's paid controls the pricing of anything. What controls pricing in basic economics is supply and demand. And right now, where we sit in this market, a super seller's market, and let me tell you, it's picking up again, right? I think we're going to go not quite back to, but close to what we were seeing back in 2020, 2021, part of 2022, where we're just seeing tons of multiple offers, people getting super aggressive, going over asking price. We're seeing tremendous appreciation in the market. Okay, so it's supply and demand. Right now, we are at like record low supplies of housing inventory. We are more than 16 years underbuilt in the United States. We just haven't built enough homes. And then on top of that, you've got millennials and now even Gen Z starting to buy homes. And millennials alone are the largest home buying population in American history. And we don't have inventory for them. So when you have low supply and you've got the largest home buying population in American history, what does that mean? There's huge demand. People are desperate for homes. You're going to continue to see competition. Oh, and by the way, if you are an unrepresented buyer without a skilled negotiating agent that is representing you and advising you on how to make a competitive offer, guess what? It's going to be really hard for you to land a home in this competitive market. Okay, so basic supply and demand. The other thing is Lawrence Yun, chief economist of the National Association of Realtors, he projected this year that we will have 4.71 million home sales happening in 2024. Listen, when I read the article that says hundreds of thousands of agents are going to get out of the business, I do believe there will be agents that are getting out of the business. There are probably some that are jumping out right now. No one in NavX Realty and no one on this, particular meeting here today. But here's the thing. I think, wow, there's going to be so much opportunity in the market with all these agents getting out and still 4.71 million homes selling this year and the largest home buying population in American history. There is so much opportunity. So I don't want you to get in this mindset of doom and gloom. It's all over. I've always said there's enough business to go around. There's enough business out here for everybody. I don't care what level of real estate you practice, whether full-time or a good part-time agent. I don't care. There's plenty of business still to go around, but you have to up your game, improve your skills from presentation to negotiation, and be able to sell your value. It's all about selling your value in this time. Okay. So how should you as an agent be responding right now? If it were me, I would freak out, right? No, not at all. Don't freak out. There's no freaking out in all of this. Okay. First of all, control the controllables. I just said it. Up your skills, right? Read. There are some amazing books out there that you can read on selling real estate. My favorite is Ninja Selling, which I think in this time is one of the most relevant training books that's out there. And no, they do not pay me to advertise this. I can just tell you, I've read it. I've practiced a lot of it. I've got agents that have been through their comprehensive training here. And I believe that if you put that model into place, you're going to be successful in any market. It's very relevant to what we're seeing today. So control the controllables, get better, improve your presentation skills, your negotiation skills, go take more classes, get curious. How do I get better? So get curious. You know, when I was a young agent and I would lose a listing to a competitor, my dad would always say, hey, call them and just ask them what you could have done better. And you know what? I always learned a ton from that. And I did get better. And there came a point where I didn't lose very often anymore, except to Vicky Piper. That's another story. Vicky Piper is a NavX agent that she just beat me all the time. Okay. So anyway, I'm going to forgive you though, Vicky, because I just think you're that great. No. So listen, get better, control the controllables. Next thing, know your value and sell your value. Just somebody do this right now, or maybe not right now. Maybe you want to pay attention right now. But as soon as you get off of here, Google 100 ways that buyers agents help buyers. Okay. You'll get lists of 100, probably 10 different lists of 100. All right. Start looking through those lists and say, yep, I do that. 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 You're going to realize, wow, I offer a ton of value to my buyers. And then what I want you to do is know that list, know what you offer that makes you unique in the marketplace, that's going to help a buyer land their dream home, that's going to help a seller sell for the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time. Know that list inside out, upside down, right side up, and be able to communicate that. So that is going to be a key. It's to know your value and sell your value. Next thing, as listing agents, when we go out and work with sellers, we want to sell the value of buyers agents, even with our sellers. Okay. So let me say this. Okay. So imagine an unrepresented buyer. If I have a listing, I've got an unrepresented buyer. All right. I'm representing the seller. This unrepresented buyer is buying. Okay. If they know to get their inspections done on time, or what everything in the contract meant, if they know those things and, you know, go through the inspection process, and there's a few things that come up on that, how often do you think we're going to hear a call that says, hey, I'm afraid the whole house is going to burn down because there's an outlet in the kitchen not working. We are out, right? Think about the number. That's a dumb example, but think about, well, it's a real example, unfortunately, but think about how many fall throughs we're going to have from unrepresented buyers if they choose not to hire a professional agent to represent them. How many fall throughs are they going to have? So I'm going to tell my sellers, you know, basically, listen, my fee is X. All right. Let's say 5 or 6%. My fee is 6%. Let's just use that, since that's what all the media is saying is going away. My fee to sell your house is 6%. Now, if we get an unrepresented buyer, I'm really going to be earning that, because I've got to manage that buyer. I've got to try to do everything I can without any fiduciary responsibility to them to keep them in the transaction so that I can get you to the closing table. Because the last thing you want to have happen, Mr. Seller, is for the deal to fall apart at day 29 when we were supposed to close on day 30 because you had a buyer that did not know what they were doing. So it is my job on your behalf to make sure that I can get them to the closing table. Now, there's no representation happening there. Or let's just say we have someone come that they request dual agency, and I'm going to be fair and equal to both parties, and both parties are okay with that. Mr. Seller and Mrs. Seller, you're going to be very happy that you have me representing them, giving them advice, talking them down off of the ledge, keeping their timelines moving forward so that ultimately I can get you to a closing table and get you where you're going on time. So there's a lot of value in that. And my fee for that is 6%. Now, let me tell you this. There's a ton of value in a buyer coming to us from another agent. Okay. If another agent brings a buyer to us, there's a lot of value in that because now they have an independent third party that I can negotiate with, that I can have real conversations with, that can talk them down off the ledge at midnight when they're freaking out and want to back out over that, outlet not working in the kitchen. That can make sure that the communication on their side, because a lot of the title communication, a lot of the lender communication, all of that happens on the buyer side. And it takes a skilled agent on that side to make sure that everything flows together and we can get you to the closing table on time. So there's a ton of value in that. In that circumstance, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I would ask that I could actually split my fee. I'm more than happy to split my fee of 6%. With that other agent, with that other broker, because it's a real value to you. Okay. So sell the value, even if you're a listing agent, sell the value of buyer's agents. Now, some of you that are heavy listers might be like, well, I don't want to sell that. I want to double dip everything. Good luck with that long term, because it's going to be a very tiring business when you're the only one showing up to show your 10 different listings, especially if we get into a market where you've got a lot of listings again. That's going to get very tiring. And I don't believe that's the best representation of every client out there. I think some clients dual agency is fine with, but I don't always think it's the best way to represent a client. Every once in a while, you got to turn down dual agency, give up that other part of the commission because it's the right thing to do with the client. But let's help each other out as agents and sell the value of that buyer's agent. Okay. All right. Next thing, get to know the buyer agency agreement or a buyer representation agreement. Again, state of Ohio does not require this. Earlier, we had agents on from Indiana, South Dakota, other parts of the country, where when I have talked to them in the past, they've said, what do you mean you don't use buyer agency agreements? But I've always used one when I write the first contract. This practice is going to have to change even for me. We're going to have to start using that earlier. And so I encourage you, get to know what that form says. And that is one thing that we as a company are going to work on, is refining that form a little bit. I'll talk about that in a second. There's a verse in the Bible that I love. It says, study and show yourself approved. Okay. This is the time that you study your craft, study the real estate market. If you want to be an expert on your city, if you want to be an expert on a neighborhood that you're farming, study the stats, know everything happening within that neighborhood, study the real estate market, read every real estate article out there, subscribe to insider real estate information. There's Weekly Real Estate News is one of my favorite places. It's free. You don't have to, buy a subscription, and they will send you stuff all the time. Weekly Real Estate News, and there's always great articles linked to that. Study the real estate market. Know what's being said nationally, but know how that relates to your local market. This is how you become an expert. There's another thing. They did not pay for sponsorship. No one's paying for sponsorship here today, unless you would like to. If you're on here and you would like to pay for sponsorship, no. But when it comes to being an expert, my KCM, Keeping Current Matters, mykcm.com. Every month on the 10th of the month, they put out a monthly market report They have slides that go with it that you can pop into your listing or buyer presentation. They have all kinds of great data that you can grab onto. You can take one of those slides and they'll give you the script on how to talk about it and make a video about it and publish on social media, or just have a conversation with the buyer that says, hey, how's the market? And you be able to spout off data that is fresh. It makes you sound like an expert and it increases your value. So be able to, be an expert in the market, study and show yourself approved. The last thing that I'll say when it comes to our response is really, I want all of you right now, and I want it to be quick. Right now, I want you to think, where were you 5 years ago today? Okay, I'm sure that there's very few of you on here that can say, yeah, let's see, 5 years ago. That would have been 2019. Let's see, March. Where was I? March. Well, okay, so you're going to have to think about it, right? Now, here's what I want you to know. It's so hard to remember where you were 5 years ago. And guess what? 5 years from today, you're probably not going to remember today. And certainly in the real estate business, what you're going to be saying is, do you remember 5 years ago when we were so afraid of what was going to happen when they actually required us to have a buyer representation agreement in place before we could show houses? And we weren't going to be able to get an offer of compensation. And the news was saying that 6% rates were going away. We were so freaking out and we didn't need to. Why? Because it's going to become a way of doing business. And the true experts, the true professionals are going to step up. They're going to embrace the change, and they are going to embrace a new way of doing business. My son, Tommy, he's one of our payment associates. He processes payments here for the company part-time. He's still in college. He's working on getting his real estate license. I talked to him after our call this morning, and because we did the same similar call earlier this morning. And when I talked to him, he said, yeah, I still don't have a full grasp on everything that you're talking about. And the beautiful thing about that is that new agents coming in today, they are like starting afresh. I mean, this is the way we do business, right? So this is all just going to be a new way of learning to do business for them. It's as if all of us are kind of new agents right now. And we need to come in and learn and become an expert at a new craft and a new way of doing business. But there's no reason to be afraid of that. Embrace this change, grab a hold of it, become the professional, and take the ton of business that's going to be available out there, because there's scaredy cats running away from the business right now before they even know what's going on. Go grab a hold of it. You're going to be successful. Okay, so all of that, I want to kind of summarize a couple of things before we get into the Q&A time, and I'm running a little bit ahead of where I was last time. Here are the NavX Realty promises, okay? So some things that we're going to do. We are going to start doing multiple monthly think tanks and make those available for any agents to attend, whether you are part of NavX or you're from outside of NavX. We currently have 6 offices. We're in talks to open additional offices. We're going to do at least one think tank at every office within NavX, and we'll be talking about this stuff. Bring your problems, bring your challenges, and let's put our minds together. I've always been the first to say that, there are way smarter people in the world than me, and I love hearing other people's perspective and how they say things. So we're going to come together in these think tanks, and we're just going to talk about how we can get better and how we can handle certain objections and how we can make better presentations. They'll be available at each one of our offices. We have offices in Fairfield, Middletown, Trenton, Westchester, Springboro, Centerville, and Troy. I will try to attend every single one that I can, and I'm going to be picking things up from all of you that I'll take to other ones. But this is a great way for us to come together, support each other, hear from one another, hear what we're having successes and failures with, and all get better at our craft of selling real estate. Okay, so monthly think tanks. There will be at least 6 options every month starting in April. Okay, so we're working on getting those scheduled now. We actually have one Wednesday of this week. I think it's about marketing, but I'm sure we'll have some conversation around this. It's down in our Fairfield office. Okay, updated buyer presentations. We're going to work on taking the amazing buyer presentation that Patty Murphy and Abby Smith worked on. We're going to take that. We're going to beef it up a little bit, add some stuff to it, have some more professional design put into it, and have some options for you to use, both in a book form and then also if you use, like I use an iPad. This is where I do my presentations. So we'll make it available in multiple different forms. It'll be a Canva template. Where I don't know where that came from, but a template that you can use and modify to be your own. Okay, so we're working on that. Buyer agency training. Now, here's what I want you to know about the buyer agency training coming with NavX. If you're a NavX agent, this will be mandatory. I did say mandatory, and agents don't like the mandatory word, but I am not going to take the risk of having you out on the street not knowing how to communicate your value. I want to make sure that you know how to do a buyer agency agreement the correct way. I want to make sure that you know how to be fully compliant. One promise I will make is that NavX Realty is going to be a fully compliant company. That is our heart. I look at it as I've got, 100 agents that I have to protect, and therefore I've got to keep agent 1 as compliant as I do agent 101. Okay. So compliance is key. We will have mandatory buyer agency training to send, to put all of our agents through, multiple opportunities to attend across all of our markets. Okay. And then the last thing is we're working on putting together consumer friendly buyer representation agreements and marketing materials. We want it to be able to be clearly communicated what we offer and what our fees are. Right now, the ones from the state level and the local levels, they're a little bit convoluted. We're going to clean that up and make it more consumer friendly. Okay. So those are the 4 promises. Think tanks coming, updated buyer presentations, buyer agency training, and consumer friendly buyer representation and marketing material agreements and marketing materials. Last thing before I start taking questions, we're putting together a leadership mastermind group. Okay. A leadership mastermind group. This group will help the company to help to form company strategy, policy, and the tools that agents will use. We want agents to join this, agents and other leaders in the company to join this group that are willing to study, to make contributions, and ultimately want to bring value to your fellow agents in the company. So if that's you, if I'm speaking to you, there's going to be a sign-up link in the chat, and then it will also be emailed out after this event today. So Leadership Mastermind Group, we're looking for a select group of agents that want to be a part of it to kind of help guide the future in terms of company strategy and how we're going to help agents to be successful. So my goal here is to keep this right around an hour. Okay. We are at 3:38 p.m. We've been going for 38 minutes, probably almost 39 minutes here. I'm ready to take some Q&A. And so Natalie has been keeping track of questions in the chat and has some emailed questions that were sent in earlier. And so, Natalie, I welcome you.
Hello.
You're not going to see her on camera, but you're going to hear her lovely voice.
Hello, I'm here. Hi, guys. So I have a couple questions that were sent in via email. I'm going to have those listed. And then if anybody has any other questions, please put them in the chat box now so then we can go over them before the end of the meeting. So question number 1 that was sent in, how will we adjust commission later in the process in circumstances when we are wanting to reduce our commission to help a deal go through, or possibly to help our buyer in a multiple offer situation?
Okay. So that would be done in writing. So that's kind of 2 separate things in my opinion. So if we're going to reduce it to help a deal go through, it would be very much like it is now. There's going to be an addendum. In that addendum, we're going to say NavX Realty, remember commissions are paid to brokerages, not agents, but NavX Realty agrees to reduce their fee of, from X percent or from, X dollars to X dollars, whatever that case is, or reduce their fee by X amount of dollars, right? So subtract that amount of dollars. But we would put that in to help consummate the transaction, or to help the transaction to get to closing. We're going to put that in writing. All right. So that would be the first case. If it comes to this on the buyer agents, or I'm sorry, on the offer, okay, multiple offers, you want to reduce your fee to help your client have the best chance to win. Well, that's going to be done on the brokerage fee agreement. Okay. So you're just going to put a lower amount on the brokerage fee agreement, which this was a question earlier. I'm going to go ahead and address this now since I'm talking about the brokerage fee agreement. Very important when you do a buyer agency, a buyer representation agreement with your buyer, you want to list on there the max amount that you would require in order to represent that buyer. And here's the example, the easiest way I can put it. So let's just say my minimum fee, Mr. Buyer, is 3% of the purchase price. Okay. So I'm going to write in 3%. Now, let's say that the seller is offering 3.5%. All right. Uncommon, but could happen, especially in the new world, right? So seller's going to offer 3.5%. I cannot accept a penny more than what is in my buyer agency or buyer representation agreement. Okay. So whatever you think is going to be the highest amount, really the better scenario would have been 2% would have been what I put in there, and the seller's willing to pay 3%. Well, I am relegated to 2%. Okay. So I would put the highest amount that you would negotiate for, and then be willing to negotiate down if necessary, Okay. So hopefully I covered that, because that was a question earlier.
Yeah. Here's another question. For buyers unrepresented, how will showings be handled? Will they be permitted to view unsupervised? Possibly seller agents will have to be present and then have that buyer sign an agreement, then becoming a dual, or other way.
So a lot of this, we have not gotten state and local regulation or guidance yet. Okay. I don't exactly have the answer for that. What I can tell you is that we are never going to carte blanche give buyers free reign to go in houses without someone licensed with them. It's just not going to happen. Okay. But how will that be handled in that circumstance? I don't know yet. This is where over the next couple of months, we expect to get guidance from the state council and guidance from our local board of realtors councils. And that will help guide us in that direction.
Awesome. So when showing multiple properties in one day, will we need a buyer contract for each property specifically?
This is not property specific. This guideline or this agreement from the National Association of Realtors only pertains to the fact that this buyer has a representation agreement, a written agreement in place from me as their agent. Once that agreement is in place, I can show them as many houses as I want. Okay. And so all of that to say, we still don't have 100% of the answers, but all you need is a buyer representation agreement. You don't have to provide proof as far as I know right now, but all of that to say, that'll be things that'll be coming out, I'm sure, over the next couple months.
Those are all the questions I have from this session. Would you like to answer any from the last one?
I don't know. Would you guys like to hear some answers from the last session? Let's do it. Go ahead with questions. That way we cover everything.
We'll do a couple of different ones that you had some great answers to. So one that was asked was, we used to print out the MLS sheet as a proof of specific percentage offer beforehand in case the listing agent changed the percentage after accepting the offer. How can we get this in writing if it's not allowed to be published anymore?
So that's exactly what the brokerage fee agreement is for. So you will use, when you submit an offer, you will submit with it a brokerage fee agreement. And very important to note that when you submit a brokerage fee agreement, you're going to check the box in the contract, at least the contract that we mostly use in Dayton, Cincinnati, and then north in the Wrist, south west Ohio area. The contract that we mostly use in those areas, you would check addenda attached or addendum attached and that would be one of the addendums that's attached. So you would just notate brokerage fee agreement. That is how we will lock in what we will be paid in the transaction and who it's coming from.
Cool. Here's another one. How does this affect what we offer buyers agents on listings? Will we be competitive if we are required to offer 3% to the other agent, especially being undercut by other brokerages?
So this is where it goes back to the language that I was using about, my fee to sell your home is 6%, right? But state the question again. Make sure I understood it.
Absolutely. It's how does this affect what we offer buyers agents on listings? Will we be competitive if we are required to offer 3% to the other agent?
We are not required to offer anything to the other agent. And this is really between, as a listing agent, this is between you and the seller. And honestly, sellers hire us to advise them to get the most money in the shortest amount of time on their houses, right? To get them where they're going on time, right? And so that said, my advice to them would be related to the value that is brought to the table by a buyer agent. And I would encourage them to offer, a cooperating fee to a buyer agent. Does that cover that one?
Yes, it does. Here's a question for you. Is the brokerage fee agreement form required by the NAR, or is that something that NavX is going to require? And does the NAR say that you cannot write it into the offer?
So we went through this question earlier. Their lenders, and Dante was very helpful, jumped in and helped answer this a little bit, but lenders, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, currently in their guidelines do not want that to be in the actual contract. And that's where the brokerage fee agreement comes in. The brokerage fee agreement is not a NavX document. This is either a board-specific document or state level, I believe they have a document that protects this. Okay. Again, in commercial, we use this document all the time when we write offers in commercial real estate. And that's because there's never been this offer of compensation. But this will be probably a board or a state level document that we might modify it according to what our attorneys say and make it available to our agents to submit with their offers.
Cool. And I'll do one last one that we had was what happens if the seller signs the offer and not the brokerage fee agreement?
If it's acknowledged in the contract as an addendum, then they either have to, strike it and initial it, okay, to reject that addendum, or they have to sign it. But if it's hanging out there and they have not signed off on it and yet have signed the contract, but not the brokerage fee agreement, we don't have a final contract until either that addendum is struck from the transaction or it's modified in some way, initialed and signed by all parties, but otherwise that addendum is still there and not necessarily in place. We just don't have a final contract until it's finally acknowledged by all parties.
Yeah, cool. One question just came in from Claire. Do you think we would be able to upload whatever document on the document portal? And then
so on the document portal in the MLS or in .loop? I'm guessing we're talking .loop.
Well, it says MLS, but possibly .loop.
Okay, so I believe we already have the brokerage fee agreement in our .loop. If we don't, I'll get with Lisa. Lisa actually sent me our current buyer agency agreement, which is in, it is in .loop, and I believe the brokerage fee agreement is in there as well. If for some reason you don't see it in there, we'll have it uploaded here in the next couple of days. We might make some modifications to it, again, depending on what our attorneys say. But my goal with all of this is I want it to be very consumer friendly.
Yeah. So Claire did follow up. She was talking about the MLS, like the RPD for other agents and for our listings.
Yes.
Yeah.
So here's the deal. No, because that would be an offer of compensation. Unfortunately, in the MLS, there can be no offers of compensation whatsoever. That means we cannot put in the agent notes that there's an offer of compensation. We cannot put an attachment on the MLS to say there is an offer of compensation. The only thing that will be allowed by, according to this settlement, is if you want to say seller will cover 3% of buyer's settlement charges, that can go into the MLS, but it cannot be in any way tied to commission. Okay. So it all has to be done outside of the MLS.
Great. Those are all the questions that we have. Do you have
Well,
anything else you want to talk about?
I would just say this, like, I know that if you spent any time in the news this weekend, it could be very, very discouraging, but take heart, because you're going to be successful in this business. And I promise you, stick with us over the next couple of months. I give you my full commitment. I'm going to work very hard as the chief visionary of this company. My heart is to help you be successful. And so I'm going to do everything I can to have NavX agents. And if you're outside of the company and you don't want to join NavX, that's okay. If I can bring value to your life and bring value to your business, I'm going to do everything I can. And I'll promise you this too. Our agent care team is fully committed to this as well. They've already put into action the list of things that I've said. They're already working on making all of it happen. And we're doing that because we want you to be successful. So here's the deal. A lot of this is mindset. Okay. There's another, I know I mentioned Bible verse earlier, but there's one of my favorites, says all things pure, all things noble, whatever is praiseworthy, whatever is true, whatever is excellent, set your mind on these things, center your mind on these things. One version says, I think it's very easy in today's world because we've got so many negative messages coming at us all the time. I think it is so very easy to set our mind on the wrong things. And so I'm going to challenge you. What are you centering your mind on? My goal is to help you centering your mind on one thing, your destination, your vision, your purpose. Okay, maybe two things, right? I want you to be successful in those things. If you are driven by a destination that you're moving towards, if you are doing your work with purpose, you're going to love what you do. And even through all of the changes, I promise you, you are going to be successful. Okay. So keep pressing ahead. Don't let fear be what you center your mind on. Center your mind on your future, and we're going to help you get there. That's my heart. That's the heart of this leadership team and the heart of our market partners. We are going to help you be successful. Let's do this together. And I can't wait until the next time we meet. Awesome. Bless you guys. Thank Natalie. Natalie, thank you for producing today and for watching the chat. And I look forward to talking to you, seeing all of you soon. Many blessings. Have a great day. Bye.